Okay. All right, we have everything.
May speaking ako. Bakit? Hindi, okay.
Okay. So we have everything ready. I guess we're gonna wait for a bit. Okay. So, hello, how are you? I hope everyone is okay, and I hope that we'll have more attendees joining us. So, just as an introduction, the Asia Pacific Young Greens is a network that gathers representatives of the Young Greens within the Asia Pacific region. And with all the issues that are happening in the world, the Green Movement fights for justice for humanity and the environment. The climate change has been an urgent matter globally, especially in the Asia Pacific region, where it's directly impacted by it through fires, floods, extreme temperature and seasonal changes, and effects on the agriculture, which is a prominent aspect for most countries in this region. But how are these young people acting on that topic, and how are the governments reacting to their voices? So we have with us Marinel Ubaldo. She's a registered social worker, and she is one of the founders of Youth Leaders Environmental Action Federation. She is the Ecological Justice Campaign Coordinator of Living Laudato Si Philippines. She is an advocate for climate and the environment, and she has been actively involved in educating communities, especially the youth and children, about climate change and the roles they take to adapt and mitigate its effects. Marinel has spoken to world leaders on behalf of Filipinos during the opening of the UNFCCC COP21 in Paris and COP25 in Madrid. She's a petitioner, and she has acted as a resource person during the Climate Justice Liability public hearing during the Climate Week in New York, USA in September 2018. She has recently been trained by former US Vice President Al Gore as a climate reality leader, and she continues to tell her story in the global platform, aiming to shed light on the reality of climate change, the urgency for world leaders to keep their climate commitments, and for the rest of the world to act on it. So I'm going to ask Marinel to share her journey that shaped her to be the young activist and advocate that she is now. So hello, Marinel.
Hello, Aya. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
I will just share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I am Marinel Ubaldo. I am an international climate justice advocate from Matarino, Salcedo, Eastern Samar. I am a daughter of a fisherman who has lived his whole life providing for his family. Life has never been easy for my father. He wasn't able to finish grade school because he needed to go out to the sea in order to provide for his family. So I first learned about climate change and DRR in October 2012. At the age of 15, I became a child facilitator. So this is Materino. This is where my area is located. So this is the Pacific Ocean, and we are facing the Pacific Ocean. So our community is actually the front line of every other disaster. So I first learned about climate change and DRR in October 2012. So at the age of 15, I became a child facilitator, and I had the opportunity to visit remote communities and schools to educate people about the causes and effects of climate change and the measures necessary to adapt and to mitigate its effects. So Typhoon Haiyan, here in the Philippines, if for anyone who does not know what I mean about the Philippines. So the Philippines is an archipelago. It is composed of 7,641 islands, and it is situated um, in the Western Pacific Ocean. So it is positioned on the Pacific Ring of Fire and close to the equator. So as you can see, this is the Philippines. We have beautiful spots, we have beautiful beaches, and we have really like white sand, white fine sand, and um, we're a tropical country. So this is, you have visited already the Philippines. Well, in the Philippines, we experience an average of 20 typhoons per year. So the Philippines is prone to tropical cyclones due to its geographical location, which generally produced heavy rains and flooding of large areas, and also strong winds, which result in heavy casualties to human life and destructions to crops and properties. Thus, it is of utmost importance to have sufficient knowledge on such maritime phenomena for beneficial purposes. So this is the ground zero of Super Typhoon Haiyan, Tacloban City. After Super Typhoon Haiyan, you can see the face destruction. A lot of people have lost their livelihood, have lost um, loved ones, have lost houses, all of their possessions. Typhoon Haiyan made me realize that climate change is not anymore a battle that we will face in the future, but a battle that we need to face today. So, as a child who experienced 20 typhoons per year, calamities and disasters have become normal for me. And I have grown up knowing that the sea could be cruel at times because of our geographic location. We are more vulnerable to so many types of climatic disasters. So my community, Matarinaw, it faces the Pacific Ocean. So yeah, we're more vulnerable. Well, I didn't know climate change could be such a great issue until 2013 came and Typhoon Haiyan hit. So my life completely turned around. I was only 16 back then, and I didn't imagine the devastation it caused us. Winds were roaring 200 kilometers per hour. It brought 4.5-meter storm surge that swept inland, destroying everything in its path. It destroyed my home, my community. Some of my friends and relatives have died, and my life completely turned around. Our electricity went out the night before Haiyan struck. So together with my whole family, we were already at the evacuation center, which was only um, 10 meters away from our house. So I just brought an encyclopedia with me so I can just read until the storm passes. So my bag was only filled with my phone and other personal things and a pen and a notebook. I didn't bring any clothes with me because I thought it would just pass, just like the other storms. Never have I imagined that nothing will left of our house, but only one-fourth of its flooring and about three of its columns or the pillars. We did not know what a storm surge meant until we experienced it ourselves. So Super Typhoon Haiyan, it started around 3 in the morning on November 8, 2013. And everyone was panicking as the winds became more intense. So I saw a woman carrying her child almost have her head cut off because of the steel sheets blown away by the strong winds. I couldn't fully describe what was happening at that moment because there were plenty of families with their children in tow rushing to seek refuge in our evacuation center because the evacuation center that they were in has been destroyed. The roof, the windows, and the doors of the building we were in got also destroyed, and many of us got injured because of the broken glass windows and flying debris. And 11 people died in our village. So 3 days after Haiyan, we were left in isolation. We had nothing to eat but cassava, and other food that we could just find in the water. We had no food, we had no electricity, we had no secure shelter, and we had no change of clothes. So we were all just wet and cold. And I was so confused of the devastation. I was so confused and devastated by the reality I was facing. So for 3 months, I was not able to go to school because it had also been destroyed. And March 2014 came, and we needed to fast track all the lessons so we could just graduate by April 2014. Also, our fishing livelihood stopped for months because my father's boat was broken. There were no fish to catch. We also couldn't bear the thought of eating fish that may have fed on the dead bodies of our neighbors and the people we knew. My father also had to sail to other places just to go fishing, but he would end up with little to nothing. There was a huge depletion of fish catch, and after Haiyan, and it made surviving even more difficult. I just want to show you this video. Mahinay-anay, inaaling tumawag hirap, nagpagpaguho, ang hirap lumitag. Nanutuwa ang mga ang namumulingkod ang kautan ng mga puno, nagkakaroon ng kasiyahan, nagkatutumba ang mga usya sa So this is Tacloban today. I cannot say that we have already recovered because there are still a lot of people who are still struggling to get back to their feet up until this moment. So, like with that experience, if climate change continues, the Philippines will be experiencing more and stronger typhoons, and super typhoon will become a normal phenomenon. And it would mean that my children and maybe your children will live their lives fighting and surviving super typhoons. They will not be able to experience what we were able to experience when we were kids. And like super typhoon took my childhood away. So after the typhoon, I needed to be responsible for myself because my parents could not support our basic needs anymore. So I just want to highlight this, that it's not resiliency that made us to rise again. Because no, we didn't have a choice. we are resilient because we don't have a choice. And I saw the hopelessness the typhoon caused, the struggle of my community and my family, the loss and the destruction. And I had seen the dead. I realized we should not just accept being vulnerable throughout our lives. We should not accept being only victims. We have the power and we have to do something. I do not want my family and my community to suffer again this way. So sharing has been the key to healing for me. Climate change is not just an issue of adaptation and mitigation, but also an issue of human rights. Because climate change is not just rising seas, melting of the glaciers, migration of species, losing of homes of the polar bears. For me, it means losing loved ones, fleeing, losing our homes, losing friends and relatives, losing love, losing livelihood, never ending adjustments, and not being able to eat, drink, and have a safe shelter, not being able to study, postponing plans, losing dreams and ambitions, and eventually losing our future. During climatic disasters, we are being deprived of our basic rights that we are entitled to enjoy. So whenever catastrophes happen, we lose our basic rights to a safe environment. We lose the right to live. We lose our right to livelihood. We lose our right to education because schools get damaged. And whenever there is a typhoon warning, our classes get suspended. We lose our human dignity, our right to mental health after Super Typhoon Haiyan, we didn't have a platform to process what just happened. We didn't have a space to debrief because we were so busy surviving. So just the other month, the Philippines has been ravaged by three consecutive typhoons, and there were strong typhoons that hit the Philippines. And this is the effect. A lot of people again lost livelihood, lost their houses, their possessions, and we should not just be contented that this will happen every year. We should do something. We should demand for accountability from our government and from those corporations who are fueling climate change, because fleeing, evacuating whenever there are disasters, it is just so tiring, and we don't deserve that kind of life. I mean, in the Philippines, we experience an average of 20 typhoons per year, and typhoons are becoming stronger and stronger. So we should really do more. We should really ask for accountability and demand for liability from these corporations who are fueling climate change. So this is in 2015 we were um me and other organization and other individuals submitted a petition to the human rights in the Philippines, Commission on Human Rights in the Philippines, to ask them to investigate 47 carbon majors. Um, these corporations are the one fueling climate change, and we asked the Commission on Human Rights to investigate the human rights violations linked to climate impacts. So Filipinos are in the front line of climate emergency. So the impacts we're experiencing, like intense typhoons and drought, are expected to get worse. While the corporations most responsible for climate change are doing business as usual, we need to hold them accountable for fueling climate change and hiding the truth from us for decades. We won't let them profit at the expense of our survival and future. Like fossil fuel companies like the Shell, ExxonMobil knew decades ago that the burning of fossil fuels could lead to catastrophic climate impacts, which would harm people and the planet. But they chose to hide this and undermine the science and the facts. Now the whole world is facing a climate emergency. But a growing number of people around the world are taking legal action, and others are supporting them by joining the global climate justice movement. So the Commission on Human Rights in the Philippines is investigating into the responsibility of 47 corporations for human rights impacts resulting from climate change. So it is actually the first ever human rights investigation into our corporate responsibility for climate change, and it has served as a platform for communities on the front line of climate impacts to share our stories and for the world's leading experts to share the basis for holding the big polluters accountable. And also now more and more young people are actually fighting and reclaiming our rights to our future. And there should be no such thing as a youth climate activist. Yet here I am. And there are thousands of others like me who have been led to a life of activism, not by choice, but by necessity, because climate change has deprived us of our basic rights. My generation will not be resigned to becoming climate statistics. So I just want to show you this video about the petition, the climate change liability petition that we have submitted to the Commission on Human Rights in the Philippines. So since then, I have been aiming to turn my vulnerability into strength, and that is through advocating for climate justice in the national and international level. So my first engagement was in 2015 when I have been given the chance to deliver a speech during the opening of the UNFCCC COP21 in France. That event actually connected me to with different networks and engagements around the world and worked with different people. It took me a long way, and last year I had the opportunity to be a youth delegate in UNFCCC COP25 in Spain. Also, together with my three friends, we have founded the Youth Leaders for Environmental Action Federation, and that is a youth-led organization based in Eastern Visayas in the Philippines. The organization partners with different youth organizations in communities and schools. We give mentorship and training to other youth organizations on where and how to start with their advocacy projects and programs. We also are the first organization who organized the climate youth strike in Eastern Visayas. We also have submitted a petition to the city of Tacloban to ban single-use plastics, and we have lobbied with the city council with a policy on banning of single-use plastic. We have also partnered with Mother Earth Foundation for a coastal cleanup and brand audit in Tacloban. So those are just some of the things that we have achieved so far, and we are continuing. Now we are partnering with organization in the national and ASEAN level. So currently we are in partnership with Zero Hour Asia to submit a letter to the ASEAN government. And one of the local project that we are doing is the adoption of one elementary school in Hiporlos in Eastern Samar. They are the beneficiary of our Vida Escuela project. And we are aiming to adopt more in the coming days. So more, and now millions and children millions of children and youth usually represent more than one third of the victim whenever a disaster struck. Research have shown that youth trainings focusing on disaster preparedness result in behavior changes, and the youth who are prepared are more confident and empowered when an actual emergency occurs. Thus, it is engaging youth in disaster risk management training and activities can increase their awareness and knowledge on what to do and how to act when disasters occur. And it may decrease the number of both youth and adult victims and casualties. So, I also had a campaign, a Right for Rights campaign with Amnesty International, which gathered around 500,000 plus support from around the world. The goal for that is for the government of the Philippines to give basic decent housing and livelihood for people who have survived Super Typhoon Haiyan. And currently, I am also working as a country coordinator for COI 16 Glasgow, for for this year's conference of the youth. Um, Now I salute our leaders who have been leading the fight and continuously capacitating the grassroots and ensuring the maximum care of their constituents. This is a long fight. I mean, climate crisis is a long fight, and we should continue to aim not just for resiliency, but for efficient and greater capacity of the people in the grassroots. Because this is just the beginning. We still have a long way to go, and we should not stop because the future of all of us depends on our decision now and our actions now. People say that the youth are the future or the tomorrow, yet some fail to realize that we, the youth, are the now and we are the present. So join us to demand accountability from from the highest carbon emitters. Join us and sign the petition for climate justice liability. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Yeah, wonderful. I think the links to the videos and the link to the petition, I think we should share it also on our Facebook page so that people can actually help. Okay, so we have with us from the participants, we have David D'Angelo. He's the president of the Green Party in Philippines. I think David, can you talk? Okay. So I just wanted to, since we have both of you on call, it would be interesting for us to see how the Green Party in the Philippines, what they did about the climate change, if they had any actions, if they were able to do anything with the cyclone that happened in 2016, 15, 16. I'll leave the speech to you. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Marinel, and everyone. Good afternoon. I think I was not yet in the Green Party of the Philippines during that time, but I was active and helping with the relief effort to other organizations. Because technically, my last integration with an environmental organization was during the campaign of a presidential campaign of a candidate that represents green initiatives. His name was Nicanor Perlas. I don't know if Marinel knew him. And I was kind of disappointed with how people reacted when it comes to change in the political landscape. because the thing is, I've been listening to Marinel and what's happening. The problem here in the Philippines is people tend to be reactive. You know, a lot of people came to help after the typhoon, and then the government received a lot of help from other countries. Then there were actions. Then I think 4 months, 5 months, a year have passed, and then you know everything started to be forgotten. That's why perhaps we in the Green Party we would really like to participate in the elections because uh, personally, uh, my my thinking is that we should always think that tomorrow may never come. That change should happen now. I am not keen up in having like zero carbon 2050, zero carbon 2030, because what if during that time it was too late already? That the climate crisis make everything impossible to do. So that's our aim for today. For now, that to do things as soon as possible, and one way to do it actually is to be in government because advocacy can only do so much. But in the end, this politician, especially in the Philippines, I know Marinel would understand. During Typhoon Haiyan, there was even a feud between the Romualdez of Tacloban and then the Aquino who were sitting in power. And then the houses that were built there were not very, how do you call that? It has not identified the cause of the problem because in the Philippines, uh, when something happened, you should ask like, uh, what is the cause of this problem? How could this be prevented next time? Right here, if a house is destroyed, there's a new house, but that house is the same as the one that was destroyed. So the next time that something happen again, it will be it will be destroyed again because it the key questions of finding the root cause to issue is not being addressed by those in power. The youth organizations can do so much, but in the end, I just hope that not only in the Philippines but across the world, the Greens should really be elected by people so that something big can be done, not tomorrow, but as soon as possible. That's how we view this one. And I personally, that's how I view it. I would not rely on tomorrow or the year after because we never know. We never know what will happen next. It might come and shock us that tomorrow everything is suddenly there and we are not prepared. So that's how we view it with the Green Party of the Philippines.
Yeah,
I hope I
it's
made
very
sense.
bad. It's no, it did. It's very bad that at this point in time we are all thinking like, okay, what if something happens, and then suddenly there's no people to live in the country that you're running. Like this
Yeah.
is one of the points in the government. In most of the countries in the Asia Pacific, it's like if you don't have people, what will you have power over? What kind of country are you gonna have power over? It's like if you don't protect and if you don't help the people against the issues that are happening in that country, what are you ruling over? A piece of
Because
land?
the thing is, the problem is the technicalities of the climate crisis should be withered down into something that could be understood by the people. Like in the Philippines, most people would not understand. I don't have a job. I don't have something to eat. What has climate change to do with it?
Mm.
What they did not know it. Everything has to do with what's happening now. The lack of food, the lack of job. It's intertwined with how we live with the environment. So I think it's technicality should really be reduced down to simple things so that everyone could really understand what's happening right now. And I really admired Marinel for saying that, and also we had a youth sector convener in the Green Party of the Philippines who is also from Tacloban who shares the same experience, and it's really it should have been a learning experience, but Personally, I don't think that it had been a learning experience based on what's happening right now, because it's still a very slow action in terms of the climate change commission in the Philippines, the government in the country. It's not only the Philippines. I think it's actually most of the other countries in Asia and probably the world. Yeah. I hope I'm
I
making
think
sense.
I also agree that in order to communicate climate change to local communities, it should be contextualized on the community setting so that people would know what how climate change affect them and what they could do in their own way. And also, like, in the rural communities, a lot of people there are farmers and fishermen, so they actually have that kind of intimate relationship with the environment, so they could witness actually what's going on in the environment. Maybe so they already have the awareness that there are changes in the environment, just that they don't know what's causing it. So that's where we should go in to educate these people that this is climate change in a way that they would understand it, and they would be able to know what they could do in their own way to adapt and mitigate its effect. A lot of people, there are just a few climate activists, I think, here in the Philippines, especially in Tacloban where I came from, because a lot of people, the youth, like myself, we have to work. A lot of people are struggling to feed their family. So how can so I really understand why there is just a few number of climate activists, especially from communities, because how can they be, I mean, they are more focused. They are more focused on providing food for their family, since they are living on day-to-day survival. A lot of people here are living on a day-to-day survival. So it is the responsibility of the government and environmental organization to make sure that these communities are being tapped, are being are that they are part of the movement, and they are being they participate in this kind of event, so they would know what's happening and they would understand more what's happening.
Yeah, it's true. So we have a question from Joanna. She's from Taiwan. So Marinel, she's asking, what has the government done in addition to the investigation so far? And she has another question. What is the experience of interacting with the government for both Marinel and David? So which one would like to start? Marinel, let's go with you.
uh, So with the petition, we are still waiting for the resolution from the Commission on Human Rights. But during the COP25 in Madrid, it has been announced that indeed these corporations can be legally accountable and liable for fueling climate change linked to climate impact. And my experience lobbying with the government, it really depends on who are on the government. There are people who are really receptive with our suggestions, with the petitions that we are submitting and the ordinances that we are submitting. And there are politicians in the government who does they do not just care, and they just do not support at all. But we should tap those who care and those who are supporting us, and we should nourish more the relationship, because the government has the capacity, they have the power, and they have the authority to make change happen. So it is very important to lobby with them, to make sure that they know what we are asking from them. So whenever we have a climate strike in Tacloban, we make sure that they know what we are asking from them. We have submitted a petition to the city council to ban the single-use plastics in Tacloban, and it was in on the fourth hearing before the pandemic started. So we're hoping that it would be implemented in the city of Tacloban soon, when everything is okay already. But they have been planning to implement it in government offices already.
That's great. David?
I think there are two things with dealing with the government, or with any government for that matter. Like the president has told the UN Assembly before that he is very supportive of climate action, and he's asking for countries who are pollutants to really do something about it. But then on the actual action, you will just ask yourself what is really happening on the ground, because you can talk about it, but when nothing is really happening, so it's all talk, and things like that. I think the right now the best thing to do is really for everyone on the environmental sector to really come up with solutions to key issues, and then work with the government rather than just being always against, because that's one thing that I have learned from, in the Philippines, that there's a red tagging thing where if you are against the government, you will be called a communist. And then uh, actually just 2 days, just last February 25, there was another environmental advocate that was assassinated. So people are anxious. So that's why in the Green Party, what we're doing is we're trying to be issue based, to come up with real solutions and then work with the government towards those issues rather than attacking a person, because we realize that we need to get past attacking politicians
Mm-hmm.
and then talking about the issues, because perhaps through this they would be less be offended by that. The party, the party divisions would uh, be less, I mean, their party would be less meaningful to them because we're talking about the issues. Because if we talk about the party, you will be tagged as, the reds or the yellows, and then the talk will back down. So changing strategy is what we are doing right now, and then we are still trying to lobby for declaring a climate emergency in the Philippines. That is not being declared until now. We are also trying to work with the government on addressing the ban on single plastic, because whatever you do, there should be something that should be done beyond the banning of single plastics, because plastics are still useful. But the thing is, how do you return those plastics, into the source? So that's what we are looking into, working with the government, like for stores to buy out plastics that have been used by consumers, and then for these stores to then return those plastics to the government, where the government can pay for them, and then do the recycling upstream. So I think government is will be receptive. It just depends on how you approach them, because politicians here are very very sensitive when you talk about, about their political parties, about who they are, about personalities. So that's one thing that we are trying to work here in the
Mm.
Philippines.
Mm-mm. Yeah, so I have one more question, I think, and then we'll call it. Just one more thing. So, for the more mobilization of youth within the Asia Pacific region, it's kind of hard mobilizing young people against certain causes, like the climate change, that not even everyone believes in it, and there's some kind of barrier that people don't want to see. They don't want to believe that there's that kind of climate change that is affecting their country and their lives on the long run. So you've mobilized the youth to hold the first strike against climate change, if I'm not wrong. So Marina, how did you mobilize the young people in your area to hold that strike?
At first, it was difficult because of the stigmatization of people. Like a lot of young people are like, not really positive about rallying or protesting, because there is great stigma here in the Philippines about protesting and rallying. They're thinking, or they believe that it doesn't solve anything. Where in fact it is our way to show to the government that we are seeing that they're not doing anything. So we have to call them out. And at first it was not really that easy. So we try to make it like a silent protest at first, and then we just marched to the legislative office, and then it just came to a point that a lot of people are already participating in the youth strike. I think they saw that it is really important to be engaged in that kind of causes, because that really changed a lot. Like a lot of people, even students, young professionals, and even older people, they're now really part of the strike, of the climate strike. And I'm just happy with how people are taking it, especially in Tacloban, because it's not really that normal. I mean, it's not really common that there are people who are protesting, but a lot of people now actually are being receptive to joining climate strikes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it really helped that we advertised it in universities and in TV and radio stations.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to ask the participants if there's anything else, and at the same time, David, by the time we confirm that nobody else has any questions, please tell us the youth of the Green Party in Philippines. Um, are they having what are the challenges that they're facing by lobbying the young people, by trying to act against the issues within the Philippines, within the area that you're in, within the young people's areas. So, what are the challenges that they're facing?
I think the biggest problem would be the stigma with the word politics.
Yeah.
Because when you go to environmental advocacy, the youth are supportive, but as Marinel said, it's already problematic. Then when you go into politics, that's the problem gets bigger because oh, it's politics. I don't want to be engaged in politics. So we are trying to talk with the universities and colleges, particularly private schools, to organize uh, the youth wing of the party, and we are trying to connect with organizations, with environmental organizations that are already established, and try to explain the real meaning of politics, because I don't know why there's a big stigma when you talk about politics, when in fact politics is a positive thing. You almost do it every day, even at your home. When you're talking with your mother, your father, that's you're having a political discussion of what to do with your home. So that's our biggest problem. And luckily, hopefully, we got approved by the Commission on Elections. We will have a representative who is a young representative of the nominee, the three nominees might be elected in Congress, who is also hopefully Bea. She is a participant of the mock-up 26, uh, which we hopefully she could be one of the nominees, so that the youth will be part of the election next year. And I hope Marinel and other organizations, environmental organizations, would really vote for our party next year, because there should be someone in government, uh, cross generation, if I may say, to lobby within the government and support all the advocacies from outside, so that these people would really, knock on the doorsteps of government and do the policy themselves, because that's what's lacking in the Philippines. There is absolutely no one in the environmental sector who is currently devoted to the Greens. Even Congressman Legarda, who advocates Luntian, is not, you know, just about 50% green. So we need really someone who will be supported by everyone and be in the government. That's our problem. And then as I said, the word politics is is a big stigma with the youth. But we are trying our best to really work on it.
Yeah, yeah, it's been the issue everywhere. Also in Lebanon, we have the same issue because of all the corruption that's been happening. All the political parties, the big ones. There's a lot of bad history, and their actions towards the kind of bettering Lebanon, they have not been actually that efficient. And yeah, so the young people, they do have that restriction of, oh, it's politics. No, I don't want to go there, because people got so bored. They're to the point that they're disgusted by the whole idea even.
Yeah.
So yeah. So another question we have, do you think that international organizations like the UN are helpful for your movement, or there's much more that they could have done? Marinel, you go first.
Of course, they're really helpful in amplifying our movement, and there's still a lot more to be done, not just by the UN, but also by the government and by the other organizations who are working in the environment field. We are, we should aim for more ambitious actions, because even if we will reach the goal of the Paris Agreement, there will still be a lot of disaster that would happen, and we should not really, we should not really just be contented in what we are doing now. We really have to amplify our action, be united, and partner with a lot of organization and with the government, because in unity we could at least address the climate crisis.
Mm, agreed. So David, what do you think?
Well, I think the UN has been helpful, but I think in the future, agreements should be more binding with
Mm,
member states. That's the
yeah.
problem. There are protocols, there are treaties, but in the end, it depends on the country whether to abide by it or not. So
Mm,
hopefully, agreements, particularly on climate crisis, would be more binding across member states, and less people, less state to veto, like China and other countries, because
yeah.
it's one of the problems of all these treaties and agreements. If one country doesn't like it, they will not abide by it. So
Yeah. Yeah. It all comes to the human greed. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Would you like to have last words before we end the session?
Never be afraid of making a difference, even if you're just the only one, you think that you're just the only one doing something. Do not ever be this feel like you're alone, because we are all in this fight and we should be united more. We should do more. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, for joining us. It's been
you're
wonderful.
welcome.
Thank you, Marina, for sharing your story with us. I hope it inspires many in the Philippine area. And thank you all for coming. We'll see you next webinar.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right.